Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Dating Sims! Emily's away. I love you, Colonel Sanders. Pins and Riddles. Oh my gosh, this genre is a mess. Dating Sims infamously take place in a widely known video game format called Un juego de estilo un visual novedoso, roughly translating to the adult typers of books, also visual novel. But if we're all honest here, let's just admit that about 90% of us only know what visual novels are thanks to DDLC. Still, visual novels center themselves around a text-based narrative, which involves reading. Scary, I know. Now, because of the imposed limitations of the medium, many authors place a strong emphasis on the narrative side of the game, or more rather, the player and character's relationship to each other. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We're not going to be actually talking about dating simulators. Is that what would require I beat one? No. Instead, I wanted to use this knowledge to focus on two things. Why do we as humans become attached to fictional characters? And how an emphasis on player-to-character relationships can actually improve a story. Specifically, one story. Now, Destiny 2 probably isn't the first game that you think of when you think of player-to-character relationships, but while we are on the topic of visual novels, let's start there. And what better game comes to mind than Find Love or Die Trying? This visual novel is a fantastic example of how the inclusion of a dating sim-like experience can be tied to the story. The game revolves around you being volunteered to enter a game show where you have to find love or die trying. You meet your cast of characters and even the host, where you learn about their past lives and who they are, mashing together into an overall fun and surprising story about conspiracies and revolution. Also, free to play. Can't go wrong with that. However, I want to emphasize why the inclusion of a more personal approach to character building is important to the story, rather than what you might find in other media. Aside from the action of dating the cast being important thematically to the game, I'm going to propose the trolley problem. There are two people in front of you. In this scenario, you don't personally know either one of these individuals, and barring any superficial biases you may have, in this way means it is impossible for you to have any preference to save one or the other. That just don't mean anything, especially when it's in a video game. But the moment we are to introduce a character who goes beyond just being a vague fictional NPC, like, oh I don't know, your mom, then suddenly things are different. If I were to ask you who you would decide to save now, most of you would decide to save her. And why? Because you spent most of your life with her. She raised you, showed you love, and at the end of the day, a relationship involving your parents is what defines her. After all, if you had no relationship with her, the impact of her flaunted death would mean no more to you than this loser of an isekai protagonist here. Transitioning back to Find Love or Die Trying, this game takes advantage of the relationships you've built with each one of these characters for one primary purpose: attachment. By investing yourself into these characters and choosing whatever trope of a character fits your guilty subconscious, you become attached. You want to be by the side of these characters for whatever may come next. You want to be there for them, to learn from them. And through this attachment, the game is able to endanger these characters in a way that further pulls you into its narrative, much like the trolley. But to avoid spoilers and to move on, I'll leave you to discover what that danger was. To finalize this, how about one more quick example of player-to-character relationships in visual novels? And how could I avoid talking about visual novels without even talking about the game that led me into all of this? Doki Doki Literature Club. And contrarily to me spoiling the game's twist 40 seconds into this video, I'll still offer a quick recap. DDLC is a game about writing poems and trying to get one of the girls to like you. However, this idea is soon turned on its head as the game begins to act in strange ways beyond a normal dating sim. So how then does this game utilize player-to-character relationships beyond dating? For this, we'll be using our good buddy Sayori as an example. Sayori is many things. She's our childhood friend. She's clumsy, cunning at times, and just kinda clueless. But at the end of the day, she looks out for us. She's the very reason we joined the literature club, and it's her implied history with us that makes her character important. This makes the reveal of her depression all the more sudden, as well as her forcing us into a corner by asking for our true feelings about her. We as players begin to feel sympathetic, and perhaps guilty. It's then that these feelings take fruition when, you know...
Oh, come on, you can't force that.
But instead of being a send-off to end the game, or a consequence of making poor decisions, her death is only part of something greater, and it makes you want to play more. You start to think, if this happened to Sayori, what about the others? There's an underlying mystery developed around the transpiring events, and why the game gets seemingly more broken as you play it. To summarize, DDLC and Find Love both show how player-to-character focus can interweave into the story beyond being just cheap dating fodder. They both emphasize the power of character attachment through personal interaction, something only possible in video games and in an environment allowing for more intimate relationship between the player and the character. But these two examples are not meant to imply that visual novels are the only story mediums that can take advantage of this leverage, because in fact, many other games have found similar success in this very approach. Would it be a crime to bring up the Mass Effect series? I was never too much into Mass Effect at the time, seeing as I was still too busy trying to figure out how to change my Xbox avatar. In fact, let me just address this, but Wavy6 isn't even my username. My sister auto-generated it on the Xbox 60 years ago, and I just kind of stuck with her account.
What is going on?
Does that make me a fraud? Ignore that. Mass Effect. I was always confused by what value this game saw in having a romance option right alongside their FPS sci-fi storytelling. I thought that having such gameplay detracted from the overall looming threat that the game was building up. About the Reapers who came to wipe out the universe to conjoin them together. And then Metaphorical Boy just kinda ends it all, but okay. But just recently, as I was watching a playthrough of the game, I once more thought about the inclusion of romance in this game. From an outside perspective, one might just say it's tasteless fan service for the player, operating only to lure in more desperate gamers. Yet, I never heard any such sentiments, so I kept thinking, and that's when it hit me. Mass Effect was the perfect game to include romance. As I've stated, the entire game centers around an unstoppable threat of hyper-advanced starships with the goal of wiping out all organisms to merge with themselves. But to the player, this ever-looming threat only works as tension if the player actually cares about the universe and the races in it. So, let's go back to that trolley problem. Why did you decide to save your mother? Because of your relationship with her. Likewise, Mass Effect creates tension by endangering a character that you've built a relationship with. This makes the overall threat of the Reapers a more personal battle, one where you're fighting not to just save your friends, but to save someone you love.
I can't lose you again.
At this point, you can probably see how a player-to-character relationship can improve the story. Fictional romance might have a rather odd connotation to it, but as I've exemplified here, many games have found the best way to invest this in a game is to go beyond just making relatable characters. With the form provided by video games, a game can tailor itself better to each player, and likewise to each character you meet in a game. Finally, we bring ourselves to Destiny. Witch Queen alone has been a fantastic DLC, nailing everything the Destiny community has wanted in the past 8 years. Man. But I wanted to focus on one thing, something that I believe we all take for granted every year. Something that furthered the impact of the Witch Queen DLC and the ensuing story. The Dawning, and how it is single-handedly one of the most critical components of Bungie's storytelling. But why don't we ask that question at the beginning of this video again? Why do we value relationships? Why does humanity have the natural inclination to seek out others? Is it for comfort, sympathy, companionship? Why do these video games manage to create a connection with us through purely fictional characters? And why Destiny? This year, as well as multiple past years, Bungie released an event called The Dawning. The Dawning has you, a guardian, one of humanity's last defenders, a wielder of light, a power gifted by being older than the universe, giving us the will and strength to take down gods as a cookie deliverer. And this begs the question, why? It's simple. Forging relationships. Remember what I've mentioned before. Although many dating simulators may invest you into the story or premise of the attachment made with these characters, many games like Find Love or Die Trying and Mass Effect use this attachment to not only characterize each companion to make them feel real, but to place the characters in a precarious situation. One where you want to stay by their side and fight. Likewise, and without going into detail, with the ending of Witch Queen we have that looming threat. One that's different from every previous one we've faced. It not only threatens the lives of the last city and the characters we know, but it threatens the lives of the Elixni and Mithrix, the race of Fallen that we've come to work with. Keitel and her Cabal, who we formed a truce with, threatening to undo everything we've worked towards. This is a revolutionary time in Destiny's history. Never before have we allied with races we used to see as enemies. Us, as Guardians, now start to see what's at stake. And Bungie understands this. Our relationship with these characters, new and old, are the driving force of this looming threat. I know this is on purpose for one reason. And this is where I ask you, what do you actually think the purpose of the Dawning is? This Dawning, 2 new gifts were added, one for the Elixni and a ritual quest for Keitel. With the Elixni, we baked our cookies and went about offering them to each one there. That might seem pretty typical, but have you actually thought about what that meant? What did that make the Elixni think of us? Or rather, what did that make us think of the Elixni? Notice how the game actually encourages you to walk around to each little group of Elixir to hand out cookies. Gifts from us. Gifts that imply that we are allies. Friends. Gifts that imply we will be there for you. The Keitel quest has evolved, leading us through a Cabal practice that celebrates honor, in an effort to show humanity's sympathetic understanding of the ceremonies back on their home planet, Torbatl, further characterizing the Cabal and their species into making them feel just as real as us and humanity's own common ceremonies. We can now think of the Cabal as more than just a race of mindless warriors. We've seen parts of their culture that's never been open to us before. And this is why the Dawning was so important this year. We might play it all off as just another set of checkboxes, but in reality, what Bungie's been doing is reminding ourselves of the many characters in Destiny, reminding us of who we fight for and why we do it, reminding us of how far each character has come through the many struggles of the past, reminding us what is truly at stake in this war if we lose, just like the games from before. But why does this all matter? Think of the question I asked earlier. Why do humans desire relationships? We as humans desire to build and form relationships because we yearn to know and be known. We create memories and spend our time with people as evidence for our love and deep care for those around us. We want to remember them and be remembered, to be real, to create a feeling that isn't satisfied by any amount of wealth or personal achievement. Think of how we felt when we first began our lives. In our mother's arms, we felt warm, we felt safe, something that helps us meet a whole new world one step at a time, even if that world may seem to do everything it can to keep us down. Think of how people act without this love. They feel fear, they feel anger, they don't want to disappear from humanity without ever having been known. This is the reason you and I get on Discord each and every day, to communicate, to share ourselves, to laugh at the world around us. It's how we can form our love for ourselves, how we give ourselves purpose. It's the reason we text and call our friends, to stay in touch, to empathize with them, to learn from and about them. We don't want to become invisible. It's why we receive a hug from our mother, why our fathers look out for us. They're real, they're there. Think of what would happen if you were to wake up one day and find everyone gone. Your friends had never been there. Every memory was nothing but a fabrication. You would feel lonely. You would feel angry. It was just a dream. You would miss them. The knowledge of them slowly dimming and their recollection of you never existing either. You woke up from a dream that you will never be able to fully recall. All you are left with is a familiar feeling, a feeling of warmth, safety, comfort. It's the same feeling from our birth and when we lose without contact from those around us. It's the same reason, I believe, why so many people become entranced by fictional characters. They can represent their very dreams become real, dreams that may not be as easily forgotten. Dating sims are a chance to meet a new person. We get to know them, to make them happy. We get to meet a character who wants to understand us, to talk to us, to build a relationship with us. And what difference is that from people we meet online? People who live cities, states, or even on the opposite side of the world from us. You may never meet them in real life. They could be as fictional as the characters you meet in a video game, but you can still know them, spend time with them, understand them, and recognize their humanity. We spend our time, our real life time in these virtual games building gifts for these characters because it's important to us, because we want to return the same love they've shown us. Characters may have touched our hearts, characters who made us laugh, characters who made us cry, characters who lead us, and characters who build us up. We see their value even if they be fictional because the truth is, they are real to us. We come back for them. That's why the inclusion of personal relationships are so important. Thank you.